Hi, this is Rodrigo Flamenco from Frame Freak Studio, and this is the Creative Hostler Show. And today we have a special guest, a wonderful director who has directed the movie called The Little Prince, which is pretty much making a lot of noise right now in the internet because it's such an awesome movie, and right now everybody is seeing it on Netflix. So, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much. Nice to meet you.
So, for all the people who don't know much about you, I would like to ask you about your history. How did you get started into this path, and how did you got where you are right now?
I've actually been really interested in film ever since I was 7 years old when I saw the first Star Wars movie when it first came out, and it pretty much blew my mind and made me, I think when I trace it back, I think that was the film that really changed my whole childhood and changed, I was Star Wars obsessed growing up all the way through Return of the Jedi. And eventually when I went to art school, I took a photography class, and the instructor of that class kind of explained in the context of his teaching, he was talking about the depth of a movie like Star Wars and how the Joseph Campbell, all of his writing on mythology and archetypes, and how George Lucas was kind of harnessing all that material and created something new with it. It really made me incredibly excited because that movie had affected me so much. And once I realized how deep and how much more was actually going on, and then I started to understand how why it was so powerful to me as a kid. So I started to really explore filmmaking. I started to explore animation, and I just very organically I gravitated towards animation because it combined a lot of different things that I liked, and eventually stop motion because it combined photography, it combined sculpting, painting, drawing. It was a way for me to kind of do all the things that I was interested in. And so I just very organically started making films and became a filmmaker by making my own short films. And eventually those short films got noticed, and I won prizes at film festivals, and I got other jobs from those films. And eventually I got an opportunity to direct a movie at DreamWorks because, essentially my short film that got nominated for an Academy Award called More, it was like a primarily stop motion short film, got recognized, and it got nominated for Academy Award. It won Best Short Film at Sundance, and that film got noticed, and it basically got my foot in the door at DreamWorks. And eventually they asked me if I wanted to give my thoughts about a project they were developing called Kung Fu Panda. And I had a lot of ideas about how that film could get made, and they were excited about my thoughts about it. So I was asked to join the creative team on Kung Fu Panda, and amazingly, 3.5 years later, we finished the film, and it was received really well, and it actually gave me, an incredible opportunity to go independent to try to find other projects that I could work on at a feature level that could be interesting and more, I guess, tied to my indie roots and more like personal film making. And Little Prince ended up coming along as an incredible opportunity to do a film that was both very personal in nature and very deeply connected to this amazing material, this story of the Little Prince that Saint-Exupéry wrote, that I was very, very much inspired by my whole life as an artist. So that just became this dream project, and I was very, very lucky to be asked to think about what I would do if I were to make a movie out of Little Prince. And it took me a while to come up with an idea and to conceive of an idea that I felt was worthy of a movie, was worthy of being a tribute to the book, and would be hopefully a complement to that amazing work of art. And I was I've been very, very lucky to be following sort of a creative path and sort of following my own instincts as an artist, and to be able to work in the field of animation ever since I started studying it in college.
Awesome. Yeah, I was checking in IMDb all the work that you have done, and it was really great to see that, because at the time I saw the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, I didn't knew much about the industry and all that, and I saw that you were the director of that movie, of the Kung Fu Panda as well, and I was like blown out of my mind. Uh, so something that I wanted to ask, because this is something that I just found out as well, that the parts in the movie that were detailed from the Little Prince were done in stop motion. I thought that everything was done in 3D. How did you get the idea of doing that?
It was actually one of the first ideas that I had. I was really struggling with the idea of adapting this very small, very poetic book, and I was asked to think about making a CG animated movie. The producers really wanted to make something that was of, sort of like a Pixar movie. They wanted to make something that was Pixar quality, and I really just didn't feel that CG animation was the right way to portray the poetry of the book. And as a lifelong lover of stop motion animation, I think my head just gravitated towards that as a way to protect the book, as a way to better represent the soul of the book, and also as a way to contrast the world of the imagination, the world of the Little Prince, with reality. And I had, sort of this epiphany that I could actually use different animation techniques to not only help tell the story, but to help convey the themes and to help sort of portray these really big and important underlying themes and ideas that are both there in the book and that I wanted to be very, very present in the movie. So using different techniques, I was able to sort of portray different levels of reality, different levels of the story, and different realms of that were necessary.
Great. And how did the idea of doing the both histories came up? Because at the beginning, I think everybody was expecting more focus on the primary history of the book itself, but then we had this new history with this girl who was fighting their impulse as a kid towards the dreams of the mother, and seeing the history of the Little Prince as a grown up. And I thought it was amazing, all the history. Like, I have friends who cried watching the film, and
Yeah.
and at the same time, but at the same time, we were like, how did they came with this idea?
Well, it came about really organically. I spent a lot of time studying the book and sort of studying my interpretation of the book, and I found a lot of clues in the book that started to indicate to me that I could actually build another story around the book that could grow out of the book. And I had this idea that I would make this larger story be about this little girl who would read the book, and the book would change her life. And the idea of the old aviator really came out organically and was inspired by the book, because, if you know the book well, there's a lot of material in the book that talks about how important the story is. The aviator says, "I do not want my story to be taken lightly." And he's very, very insistent upon how important it is that the story be shared. And at the end of the book, he talks about writing the story and how hard it was for him to write the story and to create all the illustrations, but it was very important for him to share that story. And I kind of used that as an inspiration, that he has this desire to share the story, and I combined it with an idea that's early on in the book, which is the aviator talking about being misunderstood as a 6-year-old boy, and he drew drawings, that the grown-ups didn't understand, and they thought it was just a hat, but his first drawing was actually, an elephant that was eaten by a snake. And, And I just asked the question. I said, well, what if when the aviator brought this story to the world, what if they didn't understand it, just like they didn't understand it when he was 6? And I started to conceive of an extension of the world that the aviator lived in. And I said, well, what if the book never got published? And what if it was really important to him to share the story, but nobody would listen? And I just started to bring that and extended that idea and said, well, what if he's now at the beginning of the movie a very old man and he's still trying to share this story, but nobody will listen? And finally he finds this little girl as the perfect candidate who not only needs the story, but is going to take the time to listen to it and to understand it and to go on the journey necessary to understand it. And so those were sort of, giving you little bits and pieces that gave me over time, and me and my writer, Irina Brignol, and the second writer that I worked with on the project, Bob Persichetti, these were the germs, these were the bits in the book that kind of we extrapolated out and expanded on. The other one being the really, really important one. At the end of the book, the aviator talks about how hard it was for him to lose the little prince and how it took him 6 years to deal with the loss of the little prince. And one of the ways that he deals with it is by looking up to the stars and by listening for his laughter and by, wondering if the sheep ate the rose, and wondering if when the little prince got back to his planet, wondering what happened because he forgot to draw a leash on the sheep. And that wondering, and that he says in the book that it's the most important thing, that grown-ups don't know this, but the most important thing is to sit and for him to wonder if the sheep ate the rose. And that, to me, it spoke volumes about the fact that what he's saying is that when we lose someone, when we lose a loved one, it's very important for us to continue their story and to tell their story and to find ways to let them live on in our minds, in our imaginations, and in our hearts. And so that became the inspiration for what the little girl does with the story. Towards the end of the story, she goes on a journey. She goes in her own journey of understanding the story, and she extends it in a way by asking herself those very important questions. What happened when the little prince left? And those are the questions that she asks in the fantasy sequence when she goes off. And at the end of the movie, people say, is it real? Is it fantasy? And, I want people to make their own conclusions, but if you know the book really well, hopefully you'll understand and see that what is happening is actually something that the aviator himself does in the book. So I guess the biggest thing I can point to about the larger story that people say, well, where did it come from? It's actually just a retelling of the book in a very different way. The book is essentially about a man who is broken, who has forgotten his childhood, who meets this magical little boy who teaches him about himself and teaches him about his own childhood and the meaning of having friends, and reminds him and reconnects him back to his childhood self that was more artistic, was able to make friends, was, this other version of himself. And so that story is essentially about this broken man who gets healed by this magical little boy. Well, the larger story that we're telling in the movie is about this broken little girl who is essentially a grown-up who has never had a childhood, and she meets this magical old man. And the magical old man is the embodiment of the little prince. He's the only character in the world of the movie who has actually met the little prince at the beginning of the story. And so she is in effect, healed by this magical old man who is, for all intents and purposes, a version of the little prince, an embodiment of the little prince. So in a way, we're sort of telling the whole story over again in a very, very different way, and that allows us to explore the themes of the book and the very, very powerful themes of the book in a way that gives us a different perspective on them. And the biggest clue to that is the fact that the movie ends in very much the same way the book ends. The book is all about the aviator learning to cope with the loss of the little prince, and the ending of the movie is about the little girl learning to cope with the loss of the aviator. And so that's how we echo the book and how we mirror the book in the movie. It's one of the powerful ways that we do that.
Incredible, man. And I also wanted to ask, because when we first saw the trailer, it was the French trailer here, and we were all going crazy. And at the beginning, everybody thought it was like a Pixar movie or something like that. And then we saw it wasn't. Like, oh wow, it's not one of the big ones.
Right.
Then we learned it was an independent film, aside from these big studios. I wanted to ask you, what were some problems or difficulties that the team faced and you faced doing this outside, and what were the benefits as well from doing this film outside those corporate?
Yeah, I mean, there were definite pros and cons, and I'm glad that you're pointing that out, because it is a really important distinction to make about the movie. Is it's completely independent. The financing for the film didn't come from any single source or any single entity. We had many, many, many partners in many territories. We were basically pre-selling the film in different territories, so we have a different distributor in every territory, because that was how we were getting the movie financed. So that gave us a lot of trouble. It was very complicated, and I have to say the financing structure that my French producers came up with was really made it possible, and was quite ingenious, because it made it possible for us to control creatively what the movie could be. So in the end, we were given a lot of creative control, because we were able to, as filmmakers, decide what the movie should be and what the movie needed to be. But the complicating factor was our budget, and the fact that we were independent, and we didn't have unlimited resources, and we didn't have the most perfect tool sets, and we were independent filmmakers in the most realistic sense, because we were kind of a ragtag band of artists that were trying to do right by this book. And so we were trying to put as much of our resources as we could on the screen, and ultimately, we were only hampered by our ability to pull off everything that we wanted to do. Our ambition was much bigger, I think, than our budget would allow. And so we were constantly problem solving and being resourceful in trying to sort of find ways to manage our process and manage the resources that we had to create the best results. So at the end of the day, when people say, it looks like a Pixar movie, like for anybody to describe it in any way as looking like a Pixar movie, and sometimes people say, not everything looks as good as a Pixar movie. I'm like, it's amazing that any of it looks as good as a Pixar movie, and that's the quality and the dedication of the amazing artists and technicians that we had on the project, that we were able at a much lower budget to create, I think, magic, and to create things that were quite spectacular, and it all exceeded my expectations about what we could do at the budget level we were at. And so I'm really thrilled that when the crew can get that kind of validation, and when people are really complimenting not only the artistry and the storytelling, but the technical achievement that we managed to achieve, not only on the CG side but on the stop motion side. I think the stop motion is extraordinary, and the team that was put together, that was headed by Jamie Colleary. Jamie Colleary is like a genius filmmaker, friend of mine that I've always looked up to, and I was amazed when he joined the project to help us, and really brought his sensibilities as a filmmaker and a DP and as a storyteller to really help make those sequences that are directly from the book as exquisite as possible. And I think Jamie did an incredible job of bringing his skill and his talent to the task of helping to stay true to the spirit and the soul of the book. And I'm eternally grateful to him and the entire crew that has really had dedicated themselves for years. I mean, this is hundreds of people over the course of years trying to do right by this book and to celebrate this book, and it's really quite amazing how many people put their heart and soul into this all the way through to the end with the music, the sound design, every step of the way. We've had tremendous luck and talent, luck in bringing in the best talent, but to have incredibly talented people who are really giving this project their all because they love the source material and they want to protect it. And that was really one of the biggest missions for everybody joining the project. I asked everybody to help, protect the book and come join the project to help us take care of this book. That was a really important part of taking on the job.
Also, I wanted to ask, this is maybe for people who are wanting to start in their own path, but they're just starting out and they don't have many resources, or maybe they don't know they have. What will be your advice for people who want to do stories like this that they love, but they are on their own and they are starting out? What will be your advice for them?
My advice is to make short films. I think short films are the easiest way for young filmmakers or filmmakers of any age to begin exploring the world of filmmaking, and whether it's animation or live action, you can start on your own and you can create a network of your friends that are artists. You can't do it all by yourself, but you have to start by yourself. And I try to encourage people to find ways to partner up with their friends and help your friends make films and you make films, and do everything that you can to express yourself through making a short film. And if you do that, you actually are giving yourself the best chance you can to find your voice as a filmmaker and to explore. You have to learn by doing, and you have to learn by making mistakes. And that is, I think, the biggest lesson for me in all the films that I've made is that, by giving yourself the challenge of telling a story, you're actually giving yourself the opportunity to learn by making mistakes. And, every film I've made felt like a massive pile of mistakes because you have to go through so many you have to mess up a bunch of times in order to learn anything. And the really important thing is to keep going and to keep persevering. But I think short films are the best way to express who you are as a filmmaker. And animation is incredible because you can sit down with your own two hands and you can actually make an entire film by yourself. And then you can bring on other people depending on how ambitious you get. There are ways for you to expand away from that. But I just say to people, don't wait for someone to hire you. Don't wait for someone to give you an opportunity. Find a way to do it yourself. Find a way to pursue your own interests, your own story, and try to figure out a way for you to pull it off.
Awesome. And also, what do you think it is the most common mistake most amateur filmmakers or animators are doing that they don't know they are doing it?
Well, I mean, to me, the biggest mistake that I saw in school that inspired me most was when I saw people give up. And I saw people that are defeated by, if they make a mistake, it's really hard for them to recover. And so I say, just push through. If you're going to make a bad film, make a bad film. Like, get it out of the way, and then your next film will be better. And that was the best advice someone gave to me. But I think the biggest mistake I see in student filmmakers is there's two things. One is when a young filmmaker is telling a story that they don't sort of trust the audience. I think you want to find a way to tell your story in an interesting way, but you don't want to explain everything to the audience. And that's why I say trust your audience, trust that the experience that you're trying to create for the audience is something that they will engage in and participate in, as opposed to, you don't have to kind of spoon feed the audience. So that's something that I think takes a little bit of time to learn. And then the other thing that I see sometimes is I can tell when someone's just trying to get a job, or when somebody's kind of emulating something they've already seen, and it becomes less of an artistic endeavor. It becomes less of a personal statement when it's clearly done just to get a job. And so I tell people, don't worry about getting a job. Worry about building up your skills and finding your voice as a filmmaker. That's something that you should be focusing on, and the work will come as a result of you doing that. But if all you're trying to do is get a job with your reel, or with the work that you're doing in school, or the thing that you're doing as a film, your head's going to be in the wrong place, and you're going to be trying to copy what's out there in the marketplace, as opposed to innovating. And that's the thing. That's why I love short films, and that's why I love student filmmakers, because I think at best that's, you're being innovative, and that's what's really exciting to me about that sort of the film school and the art school experience, is like, that's your great chance to innovate. That's your great chance to take risks and to try to do something different, and to go to scary places.
Nice. Also, I wanted to ask you, is there something about the whole animation world that do you feel is not being talked enough about?
Something that's not being talked enough about?
Yeah, like some difficulty that everybody is ignoring because it's not being talked too much about, or maybe something good that's being ignored. Like, for example, I think new tools like Kickstarter and Indiegogo are great, but I see as well there are a lot of people who think that they just put the Kickstarter and then magic will happen and they will have funds. That's something that I see, for example, but what would you see?
Well, I think, I always try to say to people, like, you're going to have to get your hands dirty. You're going to have to do it yourself. You're going to have to figure out how to get started yourself. And, I think, if you want to do a Kickstarter and you want to raise money for a project, you have to back up. You have to be able to prove that you know what you're doing. And nothing speaks louder than someone's short film to me. And, I learned that in school, because the first time I sent out my reel and the first time I sent out my material and I was trying to get some work, I found that the people were responding to the fact that I was, what they were responding to most in my work was the stuff that was weird and experimental and strange, and people were like, "Wow, you're actually exploring, and you're taking risks and taking chances." And so that's why I think it's really important for people to just do that. I try to talk about a lot of the things that go wrong when you're telling a movie, especially with students, because I want people to understand just how hard it is, how messy it is, and how dirty your hands have to get. It's not a simple thing, making a movie. And so if people are aware of that, they can at least go in knowing that it's going to get messy, it's going to get dirty, and you kind of just have to be ready for that.
There was a question that I wanted to ask you about teamwork, because on this, I think we have in our studio a good team right now, but it definitely took us like 2 years to get to this point. How do you get to the point where you know how to choose your own team?
So the question is, how do you choose a team?
Yeah, how will you know who not to work with or who to work with?
Well, it's hard. I mean, every project is different. The needs of the project are different, and every team that gets put together there's a lot of chemistry that's necessary, and sometimes people fit together. Ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're trying to balance everybody's strengths and weaknesses, so that if someone has a weakness in one sense, you have someone who can support that weakness in another way. I think it's really important to have everybody being respectful in the workplace, and everybody being kind of agreeing to be involved at the level that they're involved. There's nothing worse on a project when everybody's trying to, sort of climb the ladder by kind of stepping on bodies to get up, and it's one of those things that everybody has to sort of embrace the idea that this is that it's a team and that everybody has to work together. And I think that those are the kinds of important things. It's really important to find a harmony as best you can. And sometimes it doesn't work out. Like sometimes somebody just isn't a good fit, and in other cases they would be a good fit. But sometimes that just different people don't fit together, and so it's important to deal with those things because that can become problematic. But I really like working with people that not only do I respect their art, but I like them as people. And I think that's an important thing is, I'm always looking to sort of try to create teams of people that want to be spending time together. And, there's sort of a famous saying that says, it doesn't matter how talented somebody is, if they're a jerk, forget it. It's not worth it. And I've grown to learn that too. Talent is important, but it's also really important that everybody can work together and like I said, be respectful of each other as artists and as individuals. And I think one of the most important things for everybody to recognize is, people are going to have different points of view, and especially artists are going to have strong points of view sometimes, and it's important to be able to have an open dialogue and to be able to share those points of views. But it's also important to recognize when, you can give your point of view, but you have to be respectful, and everybody has to respect each other, and so that everybody can not only have a voice, but can feel like they're in a safe and creative and supported artistic environment. And that's what I'm always trying to create, as much of a collaborative artistic environment as possible, because I think that's what artists really crave and need, is the chance to allow themselves to take risks and take chances and be vulnerable as artists. And I think that's when you can really put your heart into your work and do something special and unique.
There is a question also that I wanted to ask you, and this is what will be a good challenge that you will give to amateur filmmakers to take every day, like a challenge they can do every day to improve into filmmaking?
Oh boy, a challenge every day. Well, I think writing, even if you don't see yourself as a writer, I think writing and journaling and drawing and trying to sort of explore your thoughts and ideas, I think it's really important as you develop, especially as a young artist. And that was something that was, I think, valuable for me as I was learning about myself, where if I could write and it helped me explore ideas. It helped me explore and realize that, small fleeting thoughts can actually be connected to deeper issues. And by exploring thoughts and ideas through, drawings and writings, I think if you can discipline yourself to do that every day, I think you'll be amazed when you start to see links between your thoughts and ideas, and you'll start to see themes emerge. And eventually those themes will, you can shape those themes and ideas, and you can start to build your own stories that gravitate around things that are important to you. Because if if your film or what you're making isn't meaningful to you, it's not going to be meaningful to anyone else.
Nice. Any last advice that you would like to give out that we haven't talked about in this interview?
Just make short films. Just that's the thing I say to people all the time. Make shorts. I love shorts, and that's the advice that's the drum that I bang rhythmically as much as I can. Make short films. That's what I want to see. And when you make a short, then put it out there. And I always tell people, make sure you let me know when your short is done, because I will definitely check it out.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for giving us your time, Mark. It definitely has been
a
great learning experience.
Good. Well, awesome, and congrats on what you guys are doing, and good luck with everything. And I look forward to seeing all the great short films that are coming up.
We have one comment, so as soon as we have it all ready, I'm definitely going to share it with you.
Excellent. I can't wait.
Awesome. Take care.
All right, thanks. Take care. Bye.